Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered how to bring out your bravest, boldest self, then do we have the presence-producing show for you. Today I'll be talking with Amy Cuddy, Harvard professor, amazing TED Talk speaker, and New York Times bestselling author of one of my new favorite books, Presence. Today we'll talk about bringing your boldest self to your biggest challenges, plus imposterism, iposture, and power poses. That plus we'll talk about l'esprit d'escalier, the spirit of the staircase, why we want to stop being silk, what we can all learn from Barishnakov, when you want to shut off that annoying fan, a challenge to all daughters, sisters, and female friends, what we can all learn from pill bugs, and what in the world happens when you decide to marry an Australian. So welcome to the show, Amy. Are you ready to shine?
I am. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Woo! It's so great to have you on the show. So before we dive right into things, I've got to ask, what's the latest concert that you've been to?
I just went to see an Australian band called Boy and Bear about a week ago.
And how was it?
Really good. Yeah, it was great.
This'll date me, but my first album that I ever bought was Men at Work Cargo.
I'm older. I'm sure because mine was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay. So going from there and on the Australian theme, how in the world is your surfing now?
Not great. I mean, it's, I'm never going to be a great surfer, but I'll surf. I'm not afraid to do it.
Very cool.
I was afraid to do it.
Very, very cool. And I cannot, I've boogie boarded and such, but I cannot, and I lived in Maui for 4 years. Actually banned by wife, I guess is the best description. Wouldn't let me get on the board.
Oh no, why not?
I'd hurt myself too many times in too many other activities. And specifically, bicycle racer for many years and had more than my fair share of concussions, and she didn't want me taking a digger and hitting my head.
Got it. Okay.
So what can you do? All right. So we've got so much to cover. This is an amazingly beautiful book. It's just, you can see I've just dog-eared with sticky notes the heck out of this thing. So we can't get to everything, but therefore I want to ask really briefly, can you give us Amy Cuddy 101? Get us up to speed about how you went down this path.
Here's my friend's version. I was a roller skating waitress and I hit my head and decided to become a psychologist. So there's one version. Let's see. I grew up in a really rural Pennsylvania in Amish country. I went to school at the University of Colorado. I was in a car accident my second year and had a serious head injury. I was withdrawn from school, took 4 extra years to finish. I did work as a roller skating waitress through college. And as a result of having a head injury, became interested in psychology and eventually found my way to social psychology, started studying stereotyping and prejudice, and eventually studying body language and really how we can change our own body language to make ourselves feel more confident and happy, to improve well-being.
I love it. In fact, I was running down the trails earlier today with my wife, Jessica, and she's leading the way. I've got a bunch of titanium parts. I'm working back. We're going fast, but she's the leader now. And she gets up one hill today, and I see her slow down and put her arms on her hips, her hands on her hips. I'm like, what in the world is she doing? And then she got her breath back under control, and then she was gone again. And at the end of the run, she goes, you got to talk to Amy about the pose that I've been doing when I come over the hills. It helps me get confident and feel strong. So
yeah.
So
That's
let's go from there. Let's talk about, if we can, briefly, because this kind of set the stage for everything, your job market debut in 2004, or l'esprit d'escalier. The spirit of the stairs. Yeah.
So I was in my last year of grad school, my 5th year, and my advisor took me to this elite conference. It's really made up of people who have been out of PhD programs for at least 7 years. And then they're inducted into this group. And a few grad students get to go every year. But the faculty really don't want to talk to the grad students because they really want to be hanging out with each other. my advisor decided to take me because she thought I was a good student, and it's a good way to dive into the job market, to start meeting people. And so I practiced my elevator pitch over and over again, which is just, I hate elevator pitches. I think they're terrible. That's, the whole concept doesn't work. But I rehearsed it again and again and again. And I got there, and the first night, the first event, I go into the elevator to go up to a dinner, and there are 3 people in my field who are like giants in my field. And I'm instantly intimidated and scared, and I didn't want to talk, but one of them says to me, "Okay, we're in an elevator, give us your pitch."
Oh, no.
And so I started just, words were just falling out of my mouth, and I kept restarting and apologizing, and it was like an out-of-body experience in a bad way. And I really didn't, I could not remember what I wanted to say, and all I was thinking about was what they were thinking of me and what might happen afterwards and what I should have said a minute ago. And by the time we get to the top, I really hadn't said anything. And the elevator doors open, and 2 of them run out really quickly. And one of them, and who happened to be the guy who goaded me to give the pitch in the first place, he looks at me, and he crosses the elevator threshold and turns around. And as the doors are closing, sorry, I've got my coffee here, he says, "That was the worst elevator pitch I've ever heard." Oh. And I stayed in the elevator. I didn't get out. I didn't go to the dinner. I went to the lobby, and kind of in the fetal position. And it started to come back to me, but I really at the moment in the elevator couldn't remember any of it. And the l'esprit d'escalier idea is that when you leave those situations where you kind of go blank and you think of the right thing to say or the right comeback after you leave, it's the spirit of the stairs. Like, as you're leaving, you think of it and you want a do-over and you want to run back up and do it again, but you can't. It haunts you. And
it's not even, it's like, okay, so we say elevator pitch, but nobody typically really means elevator pitch. You're in an elevator with 3 people, a tiny little metal box.
Yeah.
It's moving. So everything is set up against you. This was like a worst case scenario. If you had it to do over again with what you know now, how, if anything, would you have done things differently?
Well, it would have happened before I got into the elevator, right? So I would have not over-rehearsed the content of what I wanted to say, and I would have really gotten in touch with the ideas that I felt most passionate about, and figured out what those things are and how to communicate those things, as opposed to having the scripted pitch. I would have stopped preparing the content and started preparing my mindset before going in. Although, it's not like I expected it to happen at that moment. But before getting to the conference, I should have done. There's a point at which you stop rehearsing the content and you start preparing your mind and your body to be in a stressful situation that feels high stakes. So I would have done more of that. And in the elevator, I might have made a joke back to him about being in the elevator. But again, that's l'esprit d'escalier. That's the orphan retort. But I would have, again, rather than trying to get across the whole 90 seconds worth, I would have probably tried to connect with them about one thing that I cared about. I would have focused more at connecting with them than just dumping a whole bunch of information on them.
I think it's something you talk about later on. I'm not sorry. Synchrony, being in alignment with your higher, with your authentic self.
So when people are when people are present and being authentic, their words and nonverbal behaviors match. They line up. They become synchronized, and you're not fighting yourself. You're just being yourself. You're not scripting or choreographing all the different pieces. You're just being who you are, and those things all fall into this kind of harmony.
I love that. Can you tell us about then, I'll butcher the name, please forgive me, Lakshmi Balachandra?
Yeah. So Lakshmi was a grad student when I first met her, and she was doing work looking at venture capital pitches and what predicted the outcomes of venture capital pitches. And she was specifically looking at, she studies nonverbal, so she was looking at what kinds of nonverbal behaviors predicted who got the money and who didn't. Now, she also looked at the quality of the ideas. And just to be clear, the pitches that she looked at, everybody was above the bar. There were no crazy ideas in this set. But she wanted to find out what was the variable that determined the outcomes. And what she found was that there were a few qualities. One was enthusiasm, one was confidence, and the other one was lack of awkwardness or sort of comfort. So people who were able to communicate those qualities were more likely to get the money. So they were much more successful when they were giving their pitches, regardless of content.
Well, that's the fascinating part to me, is that what you didn't say is expertise, quality of content, organization. None of the things that you would expect a potential investor would be looking for are what came back as the strongest predictor.
Yeah, and it wasn't, I mean, yes, it's not clear what potential investors, people have different ideas about what they think they're looking for. I mean, the first is sort of, they're looking for great ideas. Well, great ideas are useless if you don't have someone who is committed to the idea, has a sense of conviction about it, and, is able to carry it out. The qualities that you think of as general sort of traditional competence qualities, again, they're not as important until you've established that this person feels this kind of comfortable confidence and enthusiasm about what he or she is doing. So people don't want to hire robots. They want to hire humans who are going to be motivated to push through difficult times. And so it's communicating a lot of information about how committed this person is to this idea, but also how open they are to feedback. So people could look cocky, and that's not the same as confident. Right? Confidence is not the same as arrogance. This kind of confidence that Lakshmi sees in these pitches is not cockiness. It's a kind of I'm so comfortable that I'm open to criticism. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to make this idea as good as it can be.
So this kind of dovetails with self-esteem and what the problem is with self-esteem, because that kind of gets into confidence versus cockiness. Can you share with us what the challenge is of self-esteem?
The challenge for psychologists is that anyone can report good self-esteem. Like, people know how to answer questions that making them look as if their self-esteem is good. And because we are all sort of egotistical to some extent, or at least egocentric, we want to think of ourselves as having good self-esteem. So people often misreport their self-esteem, and what we capture in these surveys is something that we call fragile high self-esteem. It's not real high self-esteem. It's self-reported self-esteem, and
I have high self-esteem.
Yeah, it often comes across as really cocky, and when you're not really confident but trying to project confidence, you feel threatened. You feel defensive. You feel like at any moment someone could poke a hole in this balloon, right? And it might pop. So you have to protect yourself. And so that's, people use cockiness and arrogance as a wall, or as a sort of smokescreen for insecurity. It's a way to prevent people from pushing back on them. And it does hold people at bay, but it doesn't allow you to form relationships. It's not good for you in the long run. It just gets you through that one situation.
It doesn't have resilience to it.
Right.
So going from there, can you tell us about graduate students Carolyn Wilmoth and Nico Thornley? And this was really cool, the mock job interview study.
I mean, what I'm really interested in is whether people walk away from these job interviews feeling comfortable, right? So feeling like they did the best they could and they can accept the outcome. But I think the one that you're referring to is the one where we looked at authenticity and believability, and
yes.
And those. So we look at the qualities of presence, which are enthusiasm and confidence and comfort level, and we see that those are good predictors of who gets hired for a job. So we put people through this very stressful mock job interview, and when we have people analyze these tapes and code them on these variables, we find that those things are great predictors of who gets hired over things like the content of what they said, right? So the content of the answers are not good predictors of who gets the job, but presence, that nonverbal presence is. But the reason it's a good predictor is because when we see people who are enthusiastic and confident and comfortable, what we see is authenticity. Mm-hmm. And so that's the mediating variable. People saw those people as more believable, authentic, and genuine. And that was ultimately the key that led to hiring decisions. So people want to hire people who they see as authentic, which makes sense, right? You want to know what you're getting. And you want to know that someone feels comfortable enough to show you their authentic self.
You actually do an awesome job in your book on this, is that you don't have to be an extrovert to do well at these interviews, to do well at first impressions. In fact, maybe you can tell us about Susan Cain, the author of Quiet.
Well, I could call her in because I'm at her house right now. Although she just went to the library. So, or I could call her kids in there. But no, I am at Susan's house right now. We spent a lot of time together. So Susan wrote a great book called Quiet, which is about the power of introverts and how common it is to be an introvert, and that there's nothing wrong with this. And we have this whole extrovert ideal that is just kind of nonsense. It's, this idea that you have to be this charismatic, motivational speaker who's running around the room and talking first. Mm-hmm. And that just isn't true. I mean, that's not what makes people compelling. What makes people compelling is when they're comfortable enough to be themselves. And so introverts are just as effective as extroverts. They don't have to be loud and pushy, but when they're comfortable, when they accept that part of themselves, that they need time alone, or maybe they're better in one-on-one interactions rather than big group settings. They're just as compelling as any extrovert. So the myth of extroversion as some kind of great quality is very disadvantaging, unjustifiably, to the half of the world that isn't like that.
That makes perfect sense, and my wife would completely agree.
Yes.
So from there, let's talk about maybe affirmations, why they don't work.
When people think of self-affirmation, they think about telling themselves that they're really great when they don't feel really great. So they think about saying, no, I really am confident, or I'm a great singer, so I'm going to do really well when I go out on stage and sing, or I'm a great skier. And those things don't work because you don't believe yourself. When you're feeling really anxious and bad about yourself, telling yourself that you're great is just a lie, right? You feel like you're lying to yourself. So now you no longer even trust yourself. The real self-affirmation, so the self-affirmation that is effective, has nothing to do with telling yourself that you're good at something that you don't really feel you're good at. So, for example, if you prepare to go into a math exam and you're really nervous about it, mm-hmm. just telling yourself, oh, I'm actually great at calculus, doesn't make you great at calculus. It might just make you go, actually, I'm really not great at calculus and I'm going to bomb this, and you feel even worse. Self-affirmation is when we tell ourselves, when we figure out what really matters to us, what are the qualities that make us who we are, that are just so important that if you took them away, we wouldn't feel like the same person. So you might list your core values, mm-hmm. identify the top one or two, and then write about them, why they matter to you, reflect on a time when you were able to express them, and then you're basically affirming your real self. So you're grounding yourself or anchoring yourself in who you truly are, as opposed to who you feel you need to be to get through this one stressful situation. But the funny thing is that when you do that, so say, you say it really matters to me to help people. That's part of who I am. This is why it matters to me. And when I was in middle school, I used to visit this retirement home and talk to people every week just to spend time with them. That reminds you who you are. You know that after that math exam, no matter what, you will still be that person. And so it actually allows you to feel more comfortable and safe so that you can do as well as possible on that calculus exam. And then you perform better in stressful situations, and you feel less stressed while you're doing it. That's the real kind of self-affirmation. You don't have to self-affirm in the domain in which you're being tested. You self-affirm as your true self.
I like that so much because it means that no matter what happens, and we've all had tests, evaluations, things that have gone egregiously wrong, often that are not our fault, we don't leave that situation going, what a horrible person am I for doing this way? You're fine. You're like, okay, that didn't work out. Next.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's you don't feel haunted by it, and a lot of this is about feeling haunted by things before or after, and how do you not do that? So you don't feel haunted if you self-affirm.
So let's go to vacation mode for a minute here, and let's have some fun with things. What do you enjoy most about concerts?
I just feel very connected to live music. I feel plugged into it completely the entire time. I feel like it's this wonderful little paradise. I almost don't want to overanalyze it because it's so magical for me. It's so special for me. I know that when I haven't seen enough live music, I need to get out. And actually last night there was a band playing really close by, and we missed it. And it's an old band from the 70s that did a song called Amy. They're called the Pure Prairie League. Mm-hmm. And they were playing literally 3 blocks away. And we missed it. And I was so bummed because I really felt like I needed a dose of live music. I am plugged in completely. It's like a high. It's the best possible imaginable high for me.
I love it. Last night, I'm editing one of the shows. I've got the window cracked open because at this atrium, like 3 blocks away from here, they're doing some blues concert. And
that's cool.
My ear is like out the window as I'm supposed to be editing. And I'm like, did you want to go over there?
Yeah, that's tough.
So I get it. Can you tell us what you learned from Mikko Nisanen and the Boston Ballet and Barishnakov?
Yeah. Well, so I used to be a professional ballet dancer. So that's my love of, music and movement and all of those things are connected for me. Mikko Nisanen is the artistic director of Boston Ballet. And I was talking to him about presence. What is presence for a dancer? Because the difference between a principal dancer, who's what people think of as the prima ballerina, mm-hmm. And a soloist is not technical perfection. It's about presence. So a principal dancer, to get promoted to principal, those are the people who really can be absolutely fully present on stage. And so as Mikko was describing presence, I asked him to talk about a performance that he had seen where there was real presence. And he was talking about watching Barishnakov do a ballet choreographed by Jerome Robbins. I think it was by Jerome Robbins. And he did it 1 year right after it had been choreographed, and it was technically perfect, he said. But then he saw him do it a year later, and it was different. He said it was technically the same, mm-hmm. but there was a different quality to this performance. And he said it was as if he was creating. He was talking about connection, and he said he was connecting with, and I was like the audience or the other dancers and he said with the heavens. It was like he was creating this bridge to the heavens, and he said, and I'm not even religious, but that's how it felt. Everything felt connected, and you felt part of that. You felt pulled into that moment with him. And that's, I think, how I feel about live music is I feel pulled into it. It's a kind of gestalt presence, mm-hmm. right? So that's that ability, we talked about harmony and synchrony within the self, but when you're really present, you also can create synchrony with other people and with the other things that are happening in the world, right? So that's presence.
Can you define presence? I've thought of it in terms of mindfulness, and it's more than that. I've thought of it in terms of authentic, and it's more than that.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that this is the only way to define it. The way that I define it, partly, to be practical as a psychologist, to be able to define it in a way that I allows me to look at it experimentally, mm-hmm. And also, to take it off of its pedestal, because I think that presence is held up by people as this daunting goal that no one ever really reaches. And I think that's sad, because no one ever reaches full permanent presence. No one does. It would be impossible for you to talk me out of that statement. Mm-hmm. No one ever gets there because we're human, right? Things will distract us. You never get to a point where you cannot be distracted at all. But we have moments of presence. And so I like to think about it as something that is fleeting and that lasts for moments. It's the moments when we feel attuned to our best selves and really able to summon them, to bring them forth in stressful situations. So when we're able to be our authentic best selves, be there in the moment, not worrying about what people think of us, and free to actually hear what they're saying. So free to engage with what's really happening, not with what we fear is happening.
Beautiful. Perfect. Would you mind telling us, you share in your TED Talk one of the most powerful and important topics, imposterism. And I think this is something we all face. I know when I first got on this mic, I'm like, hi, it's Michael Sandler with, yeah. I really had to grow confident in this, in that I'm like, people are going to know I haven't done many interviews and I'm not really that good at this. Anything, imposterism.
Yeah, I think that, so imposterism is the feeling of being a fraud and the feeling that you're going to be found out. And people often talk about it in professional contexts, but we feel it in other contexts as well. But it's very, very common. When it first was studied in the 70s, Pauline Clance, who's the person who first studied it, thought that it was a problem that was limited to high-achieving women because she was working at a college and hearing from a lot of high-achieving women who felt that way. But it turned out women were just more likely to talk about it openly. Mm-hmm. Men are just as likely to feel like imposters as women. But it's this feeling like you were an admissions mistake and you're going to get kicked out of college. And so you can't take any chances. You can't engage with challenges because they are threats, not opportunities. They're threatening because you might be found out. Mm-hmm. And so it's not the same as low self-esteem because you might feel really fine in some areas of your life, but not in others. Right? So you feel like an imposter in some areas, but not in other areas. It doesn't necessarily last forever, but 80% of people report having experienced it. So I think it's probably even higher than that. And it really prevents us from taking advantage of opportunities.
So when an opportunity presents itself, should we all do the Haka?
The Haka, that's such an important dance for those people that I feel, I like so many of the ideas of the Haka.
It's the New Zealand. If you watch rugby, you see them do this dance. There's nothing more powerful.
No. So Haka it's a Maori ceremonial dance that's done. So Maori, the indigenous New Zealand people, and it was sort of developed in the early 1800s. And Maori culture is part of mainstream New Zealand culture, which is unusual, sadly, for places that were colonized. But New Zealand is pretty good at this, and so the All Blacks, which is the New Zealand national rugby team, perform something called Haka before each match. And the All Blacks are the best rugby team in the world. And rugby is already a really powerful sport. These guys are huge. But the Haka involves going through a series of really expansive, strong postures as you approach the other team, also chanting in these low voices in synchrony. And it's intimidating. But the purpose of the Haka is actually not primarily to intimidate the other team. The Haka is about preparing the self, grounding the self, feeling strong, summoning your best, strongest self for a challenge. And in fact, there's even evidence that they do better, the All Blacks perform better in the match if they don't do it in front of the other team. It really is about preparing the self, not about intimidating the other team. But I do encourage you to watch Haka and look up Haka at a funeral or a wedding, because it's done at other important events as well. And you really then, when you watch it outside of a rugby match, you get a better sense of what it's about preparing the self and showing respect and reverence.
The word sacred comes to mind.
Yeah, it is sacred. And so, some of my students sometimes make up a Haka, like for their class, and I think, I don't know. I come up with something different. I like the ideas are wonderful, but I do feel like there's something sacred, especially to the Maori people in New Zealand.
Let's go from there, and let's talk about how the body shapes the mind, and what's it mean to starfish up?
Well, I mean, the idea is that when we think about body language, we tend to think about what we're communicating to other people. So, as I talked about the Haka, people see it and think it's about intimidating the other side. But it's really about preparing the self. So the body is also speaking to the self. All right.
This is something that I've had here on my little shrine since the day we started the show last year. So when we got your book in, I was so excited.
Oh, cool! Yeah, the one on it's just like an artist model, but the one on the cover is actually one of those pop-up dolls that's elasticized, where you push the bottom and it collapses. So your body and your mind are constantly in conversation. And we know that our mind is telling our body what to do. So if you say run forward, you can get your body to run forward. But the body is also speaking to the mind and sending information to the mind about what situation it's in. So is it in a safe or a threatening situation? And when we feel safe, we tend to be more open and expansive. When we feel threatened, we collapse and wrap ourselves up. And we cover our throats. We really make ourselves small and invisible. And that's because that's what animals do when they're trying to be invisible, when they're protecting themselves from a predator. The thing is that, in the human world, usually we're not being chased by predators, and yet our bodies still go into that sort of fight or flight mode, and it doesn't serve us. It's not adaptive. When you're going into something like a job interview, it's not adaptive for your body to tell you that you're actually in a fight or flight situation, because all that will do is make you feel powerless and shut down and unable to really access your best qualities and be present.
I'm thinking of the brain chemistry that goes on, the neurotransmitters that are being released and the things that are being blocked when you start to shrink forward, sort of like we joked in the beginning, like a pill bug. When you start to hunch those shoulders forward, everything's in shutdown mode.
Right. I mean, it's a whole, they call it, sort of the inhibition system, right? So your body and your mind both, sort of physiologically and psychologically are shutting down.
So then what are power poses?
I'll talk about power poses, but it's really, I think the general idea is about expansiveness more broadly. Power poses just sort of caught on because of the TED Talk, I suppose, and because it's simple and straightforward. But it's, any posture that's, really open and expansive, like Wonder Woman or Superman, or throwing your arms up in the victory pose when you run across the finish line in first place. Those are power poses, or very powerful postures. When humans and non-humans feel powerful or have power, they expand, they take up a lot of space. They make themselves big. When they feel powerless, they do the opposite. So what we look at is, how do power poses affect us psychologically, and how does it affect our performance and how we feel? And we find that by adopting these powerful postures before stressful situations, we feel and perform better in those stressful situations, because we're allowing our bodies to tell us that we are victorious, that we are confident, that we are strong, even when we don't necessarily go in psychologically feeling that way. So before you walk into a stressful situation, adopt one of these powerful postures just for a minute or two, and in privacy, in the privacy of your office or home or an elevator or a bathroom stall or something. Then go into the stressful situation, and you will go in feeling more powerful. And when we feel powerful, it activates the approach system, which is the opposite of the inhibition system.
I love it. There's one that Jessica and I use. I'm known for using it a lot on the show. It hasn't come up yet today, so maybe now is the appropriate moment. Mine is, woohoo! woo.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, and that's really the victory pose, right?
Exactly.
So that's what people do all around the world, in every culture in which it's been studied. When people win, they throw their arms up in the air in the victory pose. Spontaneously, without thinking about it, that's what they do, because they feel powerful and that their body naturally expands.
You mention in the book that we should take note when our friends, our daughters, our sisters, whoever, starts to curl forward, to help them notice when we're getting small, I believe is what.
Yeah, I mean, but that's because women do carry themselves in a less expansive way. They learn to do that. It's not something that they're born knowing. Little girls and little boys throw their arms up in the air. They run around doing cartwheels in the same way. It's not till they hit middle school that you start to see these big differences, where girls start to collapse and wrap themselves up, do this, pull their sleeves down over their hands. They make themselves small because they've learned that that's what's attractive. That's what's feminine. So we've tied expansiveness to masculinity, and there's nothing wrong with boys expanding. I just would like girls to do the same thing. And, I think that it's important to not, there are a couple things. One is that we make the mistake of talking about our daughters' bodies more than our sons' bodies. So commenting on how they look. We comment much more on girls' appearance than we do on boys' appearance. That's one thing we should stop doing, because it just makes them much more self-conscious about it, about their bodies, and they feel watched all the time. But we show them all of these images of femininity as, being dainty and fragile and frail, as opposed to strong and open. And so I think that we need to show them more images of women and girls carrying themselves unapologetically with poise and, power and pride. I do think, and this is just anecdotal, my sense is that girls who do team sports in middle school are a little bit buffered against this. And here's my working hypothesis. In team sports, you have a social group that you care about. And being strong, which requires you to be you can't really have bad slouch posture and be strong. Being strong wins you status in that group, right? So if you're the best team member, you get status. So so there's this implicit approval. I think that girls generally don't get that kind of reinforcement. So it's one argument for having girls in team sports. I didn't do a team sport, so I can't really speak from my own personal experience.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us from there, what is eye posture and what do we do about that?
Sure. Eye posture is it's this.
In your phone, curled forward.
It's when we're on our phones, all slouched like this, pulling our shoulders, we're collapsing our chests. We have our hands really close to our bodies. It's a very powerless posture. And we spend a lot of time in that posture. And it does affect us. Obviously, it affects us physically. I hear from physiotherapists all over the world who tell me they're seeing teenage boys who have the posture of elderly women because they spend so much time on their phones. And it's very hard to correct that. That's not just a matter of teaching people to sit up straight. You have to break up that fixed stoop, and you have to develop the muscle strength to hold yourself upright. So first, bad for our kids to be hunched over their phones, bad for us as well. Obviously, it takes you away from the present in the ways that we all know. Being on computers and electronics take us away from the present. But it's also, as I said, a powerless posture. So being in that eye hunch is very similar to the posture of somebody who's clinically depressed. And it makes us feel sad and less assertive. And if you get people to sit upright or work on devices that allow them to be more expansive, you see a change in their mood. They feel happier and they feel more assertive. So that eye posture, or eye hunch, or text neck, people call it, is really not good for us psychologically.
Thank you. I had never really thought before about how much you're going into that position, and so it's affecting your chemistry, it's affecting everything. You just think that you're sending a text.
That's right. You're not thinking about that at all. It's also affecting your breathing, and I think to get away from just power poses, it's just expansive posture is healthier for us for a number of reasons. It's not just because of the association of power with these expansive postures. It's also because when we're expansive, we can breathe more efficiently, more deeply, in ways that tell the nervous system that we're not in a fight or flight situation, we're in a rest and digest situation, that we're actually safe. And so breathing is very closely tied to good posture, and it can really calm you down. It can be much simpler than standing like this. It really can be just making sure that at work, if you sit at a desk, you're sitting upright, that you get up to walk. And in fact, my Fitbit just told me to get up and walk because I've been sitting for an hour. And, when you walk in a more expansive way, take longer strides, swing your arms more vertical bounce in your step. All of those things are expansive and are telling your mind that you are powerful and confident.
I love it. I'm thinking now when I lived on Hawaii, the term haole, the derogatory term in the past of the white people who would come over, or the Europeans who would come over to Hawaii, haole meant no breath, is that they were the opposite of expansive. They were taking these tiny, shallow breaths versus the locals who are big, deep, expansive, connected to the earth breaths, mana.
Right.
So from there, and we'll start to wrap things up here, other than the Fitbit, and maybe we start with the Fitbit, what are a few key ways we can mind our posture throughout the day?
Set up your workspace so that you are, if you're still, that you're, have your mouse far away from you, not right under you, right? So look at the difference between this versus this.
In close versus out. Gotcha.
Right. So don't be hunched over your phone. If you have to hold your phone, try to hold it up or lean back in your chair when you're looking at it and stretch your legs out. I see when people do that, they don't have the same sorts of negative effects that people who are hunched over their phones have. Set a reminder on your phone every hour to check your posture or to take a walk or do something that makes you more aware of your body. Just remember that even when you're passive, your body is sending your mind information. It's not just when you're on stage, it's when you're passive as well. Practice the powerful postures before you go into a stressful situation. Find a private space, stretch out as much as you can in whatever pose feels comfortable to you. Breathe deeply. This is not just, there's just oodles of science behind this. This is not, a fringe idea. Breathing deeply changes your physiology in a dramatic way. It calms you down and prepares you to be confident. And while you're in, say, something like a job interview, you want your posture to be open, but not dominant, right? And what I mean by, you're not trying to challenge someone to a duel. You're just, you're trying to show that you're confident, but also that you're interested in them. So even palms up, gestures are really important because gestures help you tell your story and they show that you care about your story. But use gestures that are open and not domineering.
That makes sense. What words of wisdom would you give to parents to teach their kids about this?
I think that we separate the body and the mind in Western culture. So kids have all of their school classes, which are about their brains. And then they've got phys ed class and lunch. And that's about the body. And so I think that we really have made a big mistake there by not tying the body to the mind. We tie the body to physical health, but not to psychological health. So we need to start early teaching our kids that how you carry yourself changes the way you feel. Start as early as you can. In middle school, when kids become really, really concerned about social pressures, tell them when you carry yourself with pride, you will project more confidence, and that changes the way people respond to you. So I think that we need to teach them that, you don't take care of your body just for your physical health. You take care of your body for your psychological well-being as well.
That's very, not contraindicated, but it's very ironic in the current educational environment, because if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying we need to kick them outdoors to do an activity, something, whether that's nature time, sport time, something where we're, for lack of another term, back in our bodies.
Right, but not just for your body, right? So that's the like we separate them. We say now it's body time, it's physical activity time, without saying, the stuff that we're doing now, this physical activity is not just for physical health. It's going to help you when you sit down to write that paper. You're actually going to write a better paper because of the psychological changes that follow from the nonverbal behavior. So I think that we have really falsely divided the mind and the body, and it's too bad. It's really not good for our kids. So teach your kids to sit up straight, not to show respect to others, but to show respect to themselves.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that. I wrote many years ago the niche bestseller, College Confidence with ADD for kids with learning disabilities, attention deficit disorder. One of the things I said is every parent out there, get your kids out maybe once a day, twice a day, get them out for walks, get them out for nature time. And they're going, well, we don't have time to do that. They've got to buckle down. And I'm going, no, that is what's going to give them the ability to be able to focus better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. Where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
Well, amycuddy.com, although I'm really more active on Twitter, and it's Amy J. C. Cuddy, so 2 C's, Amy J. C. Cuddy. On Facebook, you can find my author page, and I really keep those things up to date.
Fantastic. And if you're driving down the road and you didn't catch those links to Twitter especially, come on over to inspirenationshow.com. We'll have the links to get you over to Amy as well. 2 quick wrap-up questions I've got for you. First, a question I love to ask all of our guests, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Wow. Geez, this feels like I mean, it's there are so many people. It's hard for me to pick just one. My husband is really like a lover of life, and he certainly, like I'm happy every morning to wake up next to him, and I know that he's going to be excited about anything we do. So he makes me pretty happy. My son is 14 now, and just watching him grow up and come into himself is so beautiful. So I also feel the same way about him.
Fantastic. And any last words of wisdom that you want to share with people?
I just to remember that how you carry your body shapes how you carry your mind, and how you carry out your interactions, and how you see yourself and how you see the world. So carry yourself with pride and poise and self-respect, and that's how you'll carry out your interactions as well.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show, Amy. This has been beautiful, and I think will be transformative for people, because once people start to get back into their bodies, be more present with who they are, be more authentic to themselves, that's huge. So I can't thank you enough. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get presence, and be true to your authentic self, and shine bright.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your vacation. Thank you for taking the time, Amy. Have
You're
a
welcome.
beautiful, beautiful day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel, where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much, and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!